Last time, the Wild Hunt escorted you out. Would you rather I handled it myself this time?
We just wanted to, see how you were doing now that it's all over.
Why? Out of concern for my safety? I hope you didn't seriously think that the Rahir of Solnari would be able to lay so much as a finger upon me, given how prepared I was.
Mostly because you kind of helped us out, so we just wanted to check you were okay. Looks like all your robots are fixed, huh?
Oh, don't you worry about that. Tea time is already a write-off. The visitor before you managed to kill my appetite. If you're in the mood for tea, go ahead and help yourself. Otherwise, it's going to waste. My coasters are still missing in action, though. Use this notebook instead.
Whoa! Pretty hefty notebook. Look at all those calculations.
You can ignore those. They're just dumb scribblings. I doodle and write in my free time. Sometimes I remember the distant, dreamlike past. Sometimes I imagine the far-flung future. And other times, I grit my teeth and note down all the crazy nonsense going on in the present. Some people do the crosswords in the newspaper. This is my equivalent of that. Trying to predict the future is like daydreaming, and writing about the present just makes me furious. The past is my favorite. If nothing else, it's already set in stone, so I don't have to rack my brains trying to figure it all out. Huh. Although, having said that, the only vaguely interesting memory in my past is probably that guy they call Lord Artificer. Who else? Pretty much all the mecha in Fontaine are his personal handiwork.
Wait, are you saying you know him? Like, personally? As a friend?
I mean, I guess we were friendly enough. Yep. In fact, I'm probably the only normal person left who knew him at all. We used to chat occasionally back when he was still around. Before he passed away, he asked me to destroy all his manuscripts. I honored his request, but I did read through everything first before destroying them. I mean, I couldn't let the genius of Lord Artificer Alain Guillotin disappear like that. Would have been such a waste.
So, that's where the formulas in your notebook are from?
I just told you, those are my equivalent of crossword puzzles. They're just dumb formulas that I solve for fun when I'm bored. Alain's work was like epic poetry. The formulas in my notebook are just silly little riddles in comparison. Not that there's anything bad about them. I mean, at least, solving those riddles isn't going to hurt anyone. Except me, because I lose a few brain cells in the process. Anyway, while we're on the topic, I might as well tell you about what happened to him and his friends. Alain Guillotin had two close buddies, Renee and Jacob. They spent their childhood years together in the Nazissenkreuz Institute. They were all quite competitive, so there was some rivalry between them. But it was a friendly rivalry. But beneath the friendship and the rivalry ran something deeper, a sense of nostalgia for the past. Unfortunately, childhood would end, the prophecy would come true, the apocalypse would arrive, and the future would never be. A mad dream that would normally only capture the minds of lunatics began to take root in their hearts. A dream of saving the world. And if Renee and Alain had been people of lesser wits, that dream would probably have ended up as something for them to joke about in their older years. But alas, they were some of the sharpest minds around. They nurtured that dream with the full power of their intellect, and it grew into something that ate away at their souls. The first of them to fall under its spell was Renee. Against Alain's wishes, he persisted in experimenting on a mutual friend of theirs to try and save their life. Alain did not approve, and parted ways with Renee. It's complicated. Alain wanted to believe that Renee only did what he did for the sake of their friendship. But when he told me about what happened, I could tell he still had some suspicions about Renee's motives. Perhaps the seed that would grow into a nightmare had already sprouted in Renee's mind. Even then, the next time they met, Renee's soul had been completely engulfed by the dream of salvation. His futile attempt to change the tide of fate only resulted in a wave that swallowed up the world, even before the apocalypse came. And although that wave died down eventually, I hear that it just recently came back with a vengeance. As I understand, Renee wanted to live out his dream of salvation once more. But I'm told that the attempted resurgence finally died out for good. At long last, Renee awoke from his deluded dream. Though of course by then it was far too late. What do you think of Renee? Do you admire his transcendent genius? His view that any price was worth paying to achieve the lofty goal of saving the world? Or do you despise him? Dismiss him as an evil madman who wrought havoc on the lives of everyone around him as he pursued his delusional dream? Same difference, really. Just a matter of perspective. Really? I can't tell whether that's because you disapprove of his deeds or because he failed. Or maybe you have some other reason. Renee no longer exists in this world, and the dream he started went on to be realized by someone else. I don't like fanatics who give up their whole lives for their ideology, nor do I like fools who let their delusions take control. Maybe I could understand if Renee had just been an ordinary person, but he had a sage-like intellect, and still managed to get himself lost in the labyrinth of his own desires. Anyway, that's enough about Renee. Now, moving on to Alain Guillotin, the Lord Artificer. He managed to put a stop to the first storm whipped up by Renee. But after that, Alain lost his friends and family. To his credit, I suppose, the loss of his family and friends was purely a tragic accident. It's not like Alain sacrificed them for his cause or anything. After that, the only thing supporting his work was the same dream that had dragged his closest friend down to the abyss. But although the desire to save Fontaine drove him to found the Fontaine Research Institute, Alain continued to reject any form of transcendental knowledge or power. He was suspicious and fearful of it, having seen the way it had affected his closest friend. I think that formulas and machines derived solely from human intellect were the only thing that gave him a sense of spiritual comfort. Yet Alain's intellect was simply too great. It barely left him space to breathe in his lifetime. Once he realized that the end of his life was approaching, he finally accepted the truth. The Nazissenkreuz Institute needed someone, and a human being, to see its story through to the end. He quit working on his formulas, trading them in for the fairy tales that had played such a formative role in his childhood, but which he barely touched in his adult life. He told me that the director of the Nazissenkreuz Institute used to read those fairy tales to the children as bedtime stories. Apparently, they worked wonders at sending kids off to sleep. I think that all he wanted at that time in his life was to be able to sleep deeply without being plagued by depression. By that point, nothing else really mattered. At the very end, he laid down to rest in the ruins of the former Nazissenkreuz Institute orphanage, while the Fontaine Research Institute he had founded continued tirelessly with its work. Many years after that, tensions over competing dreams would once again cause a rift, this time between members of the Fontaine Research Institute. But the actions of those fools had nothing at all to do with Alain. And that is the story of two people from the Narzissenkreuz Institute who both wanted to save the world. One went all in on his fantasy of salvation without ever looking back, and ended up calmly sinking to the bottom of the deepest sea. The other sought desperately to burn bright in his life, even though he wasn't sure where he was going. I do sometimes wonder, why is it that people like them have such grand hopes of saving the world? Even the grandest tree starts as a tiny seed. So perhaps, for each of them, their mission to save the world began with a very simple desire: to save themselves. They were young children with friends and family who mattered to them, desires to explore the meaning of life, ambitions to have a successful career. They didn't want to see all of that taken away in one fell swoop. Or maybe they just wanted to find something to anchor themselves within the chaos, to stop them getting quietly swept away by the storms of life. But instead, the search for their own salvation took them down the rocky road laid out by fate. Do you think the desire to save oneself is enough of a justification to try and save the world? The way you said that sounded just like Alain. I asked him the same question back when he was in his prime, putting all of his energy into his work. He gave the exact same answer as you did. No elaboration, just a quick short answer before getting right back to his work. He was always that way. All right, tea time's over. I owe Arlecchino a favor for telling me these stories. I'll have to bring a whole sack of gifts the next time I visit the House of the Hearth. I'm gonna go tinker with Polonia now. You guys can do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't involve interrupting me. Polonia, exit hibernation mode. Begin diagnostics.